Welcome to the show, Justin.
How you doing, Cooper?
Good, man. How are you? How's your semester coming along?
Doing all right, but so much work, so much work. Like
Yeah,
I'm working almost like every hour of the day, so
yeah.
it's been pretty tiring. Yeah.
So how are you sort of navigating that challenge?
Well, I mean, you saw my Instagram. I was waking up pretty early. I'm done waking up at 4 a.m. But yeah, I mean, I'm still waking up at 6. I'm trying to get in as much work while I'm eating breakfast, and then after that, I work out. And I'm basically just trying to find ways to do work while I do other things. Trying to maximize my time because I think schoolwork is important, but there's so much extracurricular stuff that I have that I need to also prioritize that. So
Mhm.
it's always about a balance.
For sure. You want to talk about the Instagram account that you had going? What was it? So how many days did you last waking up at 4 a.m.?
All right, we lasted 16 days. So actually, I recorded the last one where I was saying I wasn't gonna do it. You saw the story, but I actually filmed like a post for it. But I looked so sad that I did not include it. So, but yeah, it lasted 16 days.
The post of shame.
The post, no, that was seriously the post of shame. That was bad. Yeah, so I lasted 16 days. The point of it really was I think it's important to challenge yourself a lot. And the most challenging thing for me was like doing anything active in the morning. I still remember when I was playing tennis tournaments, I hated playing tournaments right at like 7 o'clock. It was the worst thing. I
Yeah.
usually didn't perform that well. So I was like, and also during my winter break, like I had the worst sleep schedule possible. I was sleeping at 12 and 1 o'clock, and I was like, okay, I need to completely fix this.
Dude, that's when I'm going to sleep.
So I wanted to completely fix it. So I was like, okay, 4 a.m. is a cool number. Let me just try this out. So it was going well up until the point where I realized that I'm not socializing with anyone for like 80% of the day. So it was, I think it got pretty socially unhealthy. Physically, it wasn't the most optimal. I think probably working out in the gym for 40 minutes was a little better than what I was doing because rest is very important.
hmm
So I realized that even though it looks cool on camera, it's not the greatest for my health, and you got to put your health first, right? So that's why I decided not to continue with it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, what time are you going to sleep?
I was going to sleep around 8 o'clock for most of the time, but then it started to creep to 9 and then to 10. And once you hit the 10 o'clock mark, you're getting like 5 hours, 5.5 hours. It's
Yeah.
like that is just not good for you. Like the last day I did it, I couldn't keep my balance while I was doing my squats. So I was like, okay, yeah, this is not working out. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So yeah, just to clarify, so you also kept an Instagram account where you were like posting workout challenges while you were doing this.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
How is that like? You want to talk about that a little bit? How did that go?
Well, I mean,
Because
first off, I was like, I've been wanting to post something cool on Instagram for a while. I've been wanting to get into like content creation because I edit. So I thought, okay, a workout challenge would be cool. Do you know the guy that does the ice bath, like the ice bath thing on Instagram?
Wim Hof,
Not Wim
not
Hof.
Wim Hof.
No, there's another guy on Instagram. But yeah, he,
Yeah.
he he goes into the ice bath water at like, what is it, 1 degrees Celsius, and I'm like, okay, but let me do something similar to him because he always says like some inspirational quote, like a little inspirational quote, and I'm like, I could do that. So I'm like, okay, let me wake up at 4 a.m., do my workout, my calisthenic workout, and say something inspirational. Maybe it'll inspire some people. I honestly was inspiring myself a little at some point, but yeah, I think even though I would say it was sort of unsuccessful because I couldn't continue it, it helped me find a voice, and I'm a lot more confident in myself. Like before, I would hear my voice, I'm like, no, I don't want to hear that. But now I'm pretty confident with it, so it's helped me in that sense.
hmm
Yeah.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. Like the more podcasts that I've done, like
Hmm.
I get more comfortable talking,
Yeah.
but it feels less weird to hear myself talk. Like when I go
Exactly.
back, I don't know why does that. I don't know if it is because my voice actually changes from
Uh huh.
doing the podcast, or if it's just like I've gotten more used to hearing my voice. What
Yeah,
do you
yeah,
think
yeah.
it is?
No, well, I think because you're consistently hearing it, you start to accept the fact that that's how your voice sounds and you can't change that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's where the confidence comes from. It's the same thing with like networking with people because, I'm a business major.
Mhm.
You have to talk with people so much. And it's very hard in the beginning because, again, you think you sound weird. You think when you're talking, you come off as awkward. But when you do it more and more, you realize, okay, this is just how a conversation is going to go. Like some aren't going to be good, some are going to be really good, and you just have to accept it. So that's sort of where the confidence comes from.
Yeah, it's an interesting question of like how much do you want to basically progress in any skill.
Yeah,
There needs to be some degree of actually changing yourself
yeah,
to become better at the skill. Like if I want to be a better communicator, to
yeah.
some extent, I need to improve my speaking. I need to
Mm-hmm.
improve my social skills. But there's also an extent to which you have to just let go. Like you
Of
have to
course.
just accept that there's going to be awkward moments and that there's
Yeah.
going to be, boring points or that there are going to be times where my voice, like, I don't like the way I sound. I feel like
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
coming off as awkward. Like this is a bad conversation. Like that was really awkward.
Mm-hmm. I'm
So there's some extent to which I feel like I need to improve,
yeah.
but there's also some degree of accepting that, there are flaws and nothing's perfect. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've talked about this before. I think a lot of people are perfectionists and they have this, I don't know, like hypothetical version of themselves that they think is all great and they think that they can compare that to how they are. And you're not going to be able to improve that way because it's just so hard to feel satisfied with whatever you do if you're always comparing yourself to this unrealistic high version of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So I think letting go of that is very hard, but it's the first step in actually making major changes in your life. Because what I've realized in college, I think in high school, because I was getting these good grades, I was doing well in tennis. I was like, okay, I'm kind of that guy. But you have to let go of that because in order to get better at something, you're going to have to really suck at it. Right? Like all the champions were beginners at one point. So I had to let go of the fact that I was really good at things and then embrace the fact I'm going to suck at a lot of things I want to do because actually the fact that I knew I was going to suck at whatever new thing I was going to start always created a fear in me. And I've learned that you just have to let that go. And
Yeah.
I've been facing that this whole semester and last semester too.
Well, you have to give yourself permission to be
Yeah,
bad at something in order to get good at it, which
exactly.
is difficult to do if you have a fixed mindset. Like, have you heard about the concept growth mindset, fixed
Yeah,
mindset?
yeah, yeah,
Like,
I've heard about that.
yeah. So growth mindset is obviously viewing yourself as like kind of a changing entity that none of your traits are just fixed, and your
Mm-hmm.
intelligence, your abilities can change, and whether or not you're good now, that
Yeah.
can change in the future. Whereas the fixed mindset is more the persona that's um, more worried about how they're viewed now and is always trying to kind of uphold like a perfect image,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that I guess is downstream from viewing qualities as fixed.
yeah.
That's the idea. So if you view things as changing and you internalize the fact that you can grow, you're going to be a little bit less worried about how you're perceived now. You know what
Mm-hmm.
I mean? Because if things can change, then it's okay to suck because that's the first step towards getting better.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about philosophy a lot.
Mm-hmm.
One of the thoughts I've had, when I go to bed, I think to myself, okay, what would I be if I wasn't good at tennis? What would I be if I wasn't good, let's say, at video editing or public speaking? What am I at that point? And then you have to think to yourself, okay, that's really rock bottom, you know? And there's sort of, how do you say it? Mm, you have to embrace that version of yourself where you're not good at anything because that's actually where the true freedom is. If you're always thinking about what you're good at, I mean, like you said before, everything you're good at, you're going to try to keep doing those things.
Mm-hmm.
That means you're only doing those things. You can't branch out to other things. So you have to free yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. I mean, I will say though, there is some extent to which I think the perfect ideal can coexist in a healthy way,
Mm-hmm.
because like let's take basketball for example, because
Yeah.
I was a basketball player in high
Uh-huh.
school. I always wanted to perfect my skills. Like I
Yeah.
always had an image of like what the perfect version of my game would look like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think the difference is that, that was unhealthy if I wasn't that, it would negatively impact my self-worth. Like
Yeah.
I felt like I was just a lesser person because I wasn't achieving, the perfect ideal.
Yeah.
So I feel like the way that it can, I guess, coexist with your, with your being and your mental health in a more optimal way
Yeah.
is if you accept that you're not, the perfect ideal is something that's there to make you better. It's not something that is there for you to actually realize necessarily, because you're not actually you have to remember, I feel like I needed to remember that I'm never going to have a perfect game.
Yeah.
But I can compare what I'm doing to the perfect game, and I can, look at the patterns as to like, okay, this is where I'm deviating. Let me fix this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think when it inspires a change in work and a change in habits, that's not me saying, fuck, I'm not the perfect person. Like, this is a serious problem.
Yeah.
No, it's like, okay, here are the differences between where I am and where I want to be. Let me fix this.
Yeah.
I've
thought about what's like a good perfectionist, like a healthy perfectionist. And you and I learned psychology last year, so about upward comparison, where you're always comparing yourself to something higher, and that's what most people are dealing with when they're perfectionists. They're always comparing themselves to something higher. But like you said, the only healthy way to do it is, perfectionists want to consistently improve, but they also have the comparison factor. Once you get rid of the comparison factor, I think it's healthy. If you're consistently having the drive to improve towards a perfectionist thing and you're not comparing yourself, then it's like, okay, now you're doing something really good for yourself. Like Kobe talked about it, how he said he went for perfectionism because no one else dared to. I don't think Kobe was saying, oh, I suck so much because I'm not this perfect player. He's not saying that. He just wants to get so good to reach that idealistic self. So that's what I'm saying. If you get rid of the comparison factor, it'll be healthy.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've never really thought about these ideas so much, but I guess my thinking is like, you can have your perfect ideal as long as it's just something that inspires growth.
Yeah.
But it can't be something that inspires like, detrimental thoughts. I think you just have to gauge whether it's something that's having a positive impact on your habits and your mental health, or if it's something that isn't.
Oh, for sure.
But so let's jump in. So correct me if I'm wrong here, but most of the people I know who've played tennis have had a ton of formal training. Like they have, expensive coaches, expensive, tennis centers, whatever. You didn't have this. So you spent, time growing up training on your own, training with your dad, correct?
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about like just talk about your journey, with this, I guess something that would appear to be a disadvantage.
Well, as a kid, you don't think about it, right? I mean, the more I grew up, I'm like, oh, wow, I wish I could have had this training. But yeah, as a kid, I started out like, I think I was 6 years old when I first started. My dad bought me my first tennis racket, and where we were hitting for the first year, we were hitting on a basketball court. So your place, we brought like a basket of balls, and we just hit to the fence, and we would say, okay, this bar is the net, so like we're hitting again above the net. So that was my training in the beginning. We're like bouncing the ball on the basketball court because no one used it. It was like a park out of nowhere. So that's where I first began. And then eventually we moved on to we found this really cracked tennis court. So basically a tennis court is supposed to be painted like all over it because it allows you to slide and like it won't hurt your ankle. But this tennis court, basically there was cement outside of the main court. So if you slide on that, you're going to hurt your ankle. So it was very bootleg, but I trained there for years, probably like since I was from 9 to 15, I was training on that court. And yeah, I mean, in the beginning, I did have some like USTA, which is the United States Tennis Association or Academy. I had a few lessons with them, but it's costly. It's like thousands upon thousands of dollars. And so eventually my parents were like, nah, we can't do this. So basically at the age of, I think 11, I wasn't having any formal training. I already had like a little amount. At that point, I wasn't having any formal training. So it was tough. You know, the worst part actually was the winter time. This is why I could do the Instagram account, because it's not even that bad compared to what I did when I was like 10, 11. Yo, when it would snow, we would still go out. We would shovel the court. We would bring a shovel and shovel the court. We would shovel the line so that we could serve into it. Like I would serve the ball into the snow and we could see it, like make a ditch into it. So that's how I was training in the winter.
Dude, you're a beast, man. You're a beast for that.
No, like
How old were you at this point?
I was like 11,
Wow.
11, 12.
Respect.
But honestly, it's mostly because of my father, right? If you don't have someone that you could look up to, that's there, that's strong, nah, I'm not doing that, right? Like, but my dad was there to always support me. You know, if I suffered, he was suffering with me. I think as a kid, I didn't realize that because he was so tough on me. You know, sometimes I was like, why is he bringing me out to the court still? But I realized, wow, he really cared. Like he knew that I cared about the sport. So he tried to push me the best he could. And so that's why I'm always in debt to my father. Uh, yeah, it was really rough in the winter. Eventually, I got this full scholarship to the City Parks Foundation Tennis Academy. They provide free tennis instruction, so I got to train there over the summer, and then they had a winter program, but it was only on the weekends.
Mm.
So it was only like it was from 8 to 10. So I never got to sleep in on the weekends as a kid because
Yeah.
I had free tennis training. So I had to go. I had to go.
Hold on, real quick.
Yeah.
What were your goals as a tennis player? Were you just trying to be the best version of yourself as an athlete, or were you actually did you have a clear goal like I want to play D1, I want to play in college? Like what was the
Well,
goal?
you know, my uncle would always ask me, "Do you want to be the next Roger Federer?" And I said, "No, I just want to be the next Justin Chong."
Mhm.
So it was really just about, yeah, like you said, being the best I could. I mean, who doesn't want to win a Grand Slam, right? That's the that's the vision.
Yeah.
I wanted I wanted to at least qualify for the U.S. Open. I mean, it's like it's a drifting dream at this point. It's hard to accept. I'm still fighting for it. I'm still young, you know, 18, still have a chance. It's just hard. But yeah, the goal was probably to qualify for a Grand Slam, even win it. Actually, now that I remember, at age 10, I was like, I'm going to be the youngest Grand Slam champion. It didn't happen, but you know, look, it's good to have optimism as a
Yeah.
kid. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
No, yeah. I mean, I wanted to play in the NBA, so we're two.
Okay.
We're in the same boat
Yeah,
here,
same
man.
same boat, man.
No, the reason I ask is just
Yeah,
because I want to, sort of contextualize for the listener,
of course.
if there are any. No, I'm playing. Uh,
No, you got plenty, bro. I'm one of them. Okay,
bet.
so
No,
don't worry.
because I think it makes a difference if you're grinding like
Hmm.
this for a goal,
Yeah,
and people would want to know what that goal is,
yeah.
and like because if your goal was just to be like have fun,
Hmm.
then not having somewhere to train during the week isn't that big of a problem,
Yeah, yeah.
because someone might be saying, oh, just train during the weekends, no big deal. But the
Uh huh.
problem is that your goal, like you had ambitious goals that
Yeah,
were set for your
yeah,
tennis career that you wanted to achieve. You wanted to win a Grand Slam.
yeah.
So you can't just accept, oh, I'll just train during the week. Like, no,
No,
you had to make the sacrifice to make it work in the snow somehow.
there was never an excuse. I swear. Like, if it rained, we would be doing volleys in the hallway and through the night until I could hit 100 in a row. Like, there was never an excuse not to train. If we weren't training, then we were talking about, like, we were analyzing players or we were taking notes. I have books of notes, bro. It's like my own tennis diary. I look at it, I'm like, wow, I did all that. You know, it's something that I think the nice thing is that you could look back on it and you're like, wow, I did all that. You know, not many people get to say, I dedicated myself to a cause for more than 10 years. You know, everyone's like trying to figure out what they want to do. But there's something really beautiful about being so consistent on something and seeing you progress every single day, every single year.
Yeah,
So,
real quick,
yeah.
just to jump in,
Hmm.
a lot of people told me that like if I didn't achieve my basketball goals, that
Yeah.
like I'd regret the time that I
Oh
spent
my God,
playing.
I've heard that
Like
so many times.
I just
I've heard this.
disagree.
I hate that. It's the worst
It
thing you
was
could tell someone.
it was just like I didn't achieve. So I'm
Hmm.
here. Like I can
Yeah.
speak, from
Yeah.
firsthand experience. I didn't achieve the goals that I wanted to achieve,
Hmm.
and I don't regret it for a second
Yeah.
because number one, I was extremely passionate about it. It
Hmm.
taught me a ton of life lessons.
Oh yeah.
And I can look back and just be proud that like no matter what happened, I
Yeah.
was staying dedicated to my craft.
Hmm.
I it's just meaningful to be able to look back and say, you know what, I went through a ton of bullshit related to this. But I stayed committed to it day in and day out as a kid. Like most adults can't do that. When, things are going wrong, stay committed to something like that. And, it's a nice thing to look back on and be like, damn, like,
I mean, we've talked about confidence. This is probably why you could do your podcast, right? Without basketball, I don't know. It's tough. It's tough to go through all the failures. But yeah, I still remember in 4th grade, there was this girl I knew. And so she lived right at the corner where the tennis court was. Mm-hmm. So it was like very close by. And she was like, why are you out there every day? Like, what are you doing? And I've had friends tell me, Justin, like, you should quit, bro. Like, what are you trying to achieve? And I'm a 5th grader, right? So obviously no one is dreaming that big as a kid, but you and I did. And like you said, it's something to be proud about. You went through the journey. You did what you could. I feel like I could do more, but like that's all of us, right? You probably would have had a bigger regret if you quit at age 9 and it was like, oh, what if I really did continue, trained and all that. There's always the what ifs, and if you get rid of that in your life, you'll be a lot happier, I think. Yeah.
I mean, I definitely think I could have been better if I had just, started working on computer science at age like 9. But I wanted to play basketball.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe there's an argument for like when you're an adult, you should, spend your time on things that actually are, things that you could realistically see yourself achieving. Mm-hmm. But like, I was a kid, man. I was like 8 years old. I just wanted to hoop.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it feels naive to be, for someone to tell me at that age to do the rational, like spend my time where there's, the highest probability that I'm saying. I just wanted to play basketball, man.
Well, that they're saying that because they couldn't achieve their dreams. People tend to, it's the truth. Yeah. Right? It's the truth. They had their dreams, they didn't do it. Like people tend to like push their thoughts onto others, like push their life onto others. And that's the kind of thing you have to rebel against because again, I'm going to point to Kobe because, I love everything he says most of the time, except for the fact that he doesn't get enough sleep. That was really bad.
Like, yeah, he's waking up at 3 a.m.
The way he was pushing for it, he was like, I wake up, I get only 4 hours of sleep and I work out more than all the NBA players.
I don't think he was actually doing that every day.
Like, I would really hope not. It's really bad. Like,
I think he might have been doing that at the beginning of his career, but I've seen videos of him talking about like how he learned that recovery was something that was extremely important and he started to prioritize.
I think like Roger Federer gets about 12 hours of sleep each day. Like he's taking mad naps. So yeah, sleep is important. Again, that's why I quit the 4 a.m. thing. But yeah, what were we talking about?
I don't even know.
I don't remember.
You were telling your story of like, you just got the scholarship to this tennis.
Oh yeah. So it was for low income tennis players. Obviously you had to be good. It was pretty competitive at that time. We've had players that gone national. So it was tough. I mean, I got in through all my training. So I was very happy about that. And they provided free tournaments for all of us. So it was like for each borough, there was a tournament. So I was like, okay, this is the first goal, to win all the tournaments. Eventually at the age of like 13, I like sweep the whole thing and the invitational. So I was pretty excited about that. That was that was nice, And then
getting pumped up already, man.
Getting pumped. Yeah, no, it was like, yeah, I did that. Yeah. I'm the king of New York City.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, it was really nice. And then they also have the winter tournament. So they have the summer tournaments and then the winter. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna win the summers and then I'm gonna win the winter tournament. So I did that too. So that was really cool. And eventually, I think it was like I was around 14, 15. That kind of made me the ambassador of the program because I knew all the guys. I was like, it was a community. It was like a family at that point. There was something really beautiful with being with so many people that have the same struggle as you, because all of them financially were struggling. Like their families financially had a tough time. So we all did hang out afterwards. It was great. We all were outside kids. We didn't have the nice indoor facilities. And we didn't really care to either. It's a simple approach to life. So
What do you mean you were the ambassador?
oh yeah, so eventually they hosted this event for, do you know Lena? Yeah,
No.
so she's a three-time Grand Slam champion. She was being inducted into the Hall of Fame, and they were like, Justin.
Jeez, I can't believe I don't know this.
No, it's okay. It's okay. She's big in China, so
Okay.
yeah. So eventually, they asked me, Justin, do you want to hit with her? But it's like going to be televised on Hong Kong news and big Chinese news network. So I was like, okay. So I did it, and the news channels also interviewed me. So I did pretty well in the interview. I was thinking about it all night long. Like, what am I gonna say? What am I gonna say? So
That's where you got your preparation for this podcast.
yeah. Of course, I was thinking about no, I don't do that anymore. I try not to. Too much stress.
Nah.
It's way too much stress.
Yeah.
It's tough. But anyway, yeah. So they saw how I performed with the public speaking, and eventually they picked me for their annual fundraiser, where I got to talk to sponsors and I gave a 5-minute speech. And yeah, we helped raise $325,000 that night. So it was a really cool night. It helped me. I think that was the moment I realized, okay, I'm not bad at public speaking. Like I could give a speech. So that also helped me gain some confidence. And yeah, so around that 15 age, I was like an ambassador for the program. And then I was still playing tournaments. I was doing all that. And yeah, I mean, around age 16, then I kind of started slowing down, started not to go as much to the program because I got another scholarship to another place, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna take my chances there. And this is probably gonna jump into another topic about traveling, because now the academy that I was going to was not in New York City. It wasn't like 10 minutes away. Now it's in Long Island. So this is an hour long traffic. You can imagine what my dad is going through. It's like, why are we doing that? Obviously, my dad cared enough to like drive me every time. It was like Thursday, Sunday, I think Tuesday at times. So now comes into the factor of traveling. And that got really hard with my schoolwork because I also get really car sick.
Yeah, bro, doing homework in the car is not fun.
No, I at some point I quit. I couldn't do it. I would get back at like, what was it, like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock and get my homework done. And
did that affect your grades?
No, I mean,
were you able to keep your grades up doing that?
Yeah, well, we always think about, okay, I could have got like 1% higher, 2% higher. I could have been a 100% student. No, I mean, my grades were still good. You kind of realize that, I mean, you probably can relate to this, that you have to balance both. You can't just prioritize one. And like, I was okay at that point getting a 96 or 90s in my assignments. It's okay because I'm working on something else. That's important to me. You said in another podcast, I think one of your episodes with your friend, it was like about how you have to kind of rebel against getting perfect grades and
yeah,
I remember that. It was your juggler friend. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was an interesting. Was it the one where he was talking about how he got a B in a class?
Yeah,
because the marginal cost.
Yeah,
because it really is interesting, and the idea that I really sort of came out of that conversation with is that like sometimes it takes more discipline to do bad, or not bad, but like to do maybe like not as good as you possibly could. Sometimes it takes more willpower to do that than to actually do your best.
No, for sure.
Because sometimes, like, especially for me, sometimes an A comes out of me just being so scared about, like, the consequences of not getting an A.
Yeah.
Where, like, in those scenarios, the more virtuous decision or the wiser decision might be to say, all right, maybe I have to take a B in this class. Or even like a B minus, or like maybe lower if it means that I can, buy back 10 hours a week to just do the things that I'm passionate about. There might be consequences to that, but I also might have to face that in order to just pursue my goals. You know what I mean? Like it is an interesting discussion. I'm not saying that everyone listening should go fail the class.
No, don't do that, guys.
Yeah.
Your parents are paying money for it.
But I am saying like the marginal cost might not be worth it of going from like, a pretty good grade to a perfect grade.
I've talked about this with my friend who's in honors college. We've talked about sort of that there's a comfort too, that it's very comforting that you get good grades. And there's something very uncomforting trying to go for a goal that you know you're not going to succeed in. So, you and I are going for something that's going to give us a harder life because we're
Yeah.
going for something that, okay, we might not succeed. And we have to give up something that we know we could succeed in if we give a lot of our time to it. But, you have to keep your dreams pure, right? You got to stay as optimistic as possible. I think there's also like a pressure from society that, if you're not being socially responsible, you're not taking care of your finance and all that, then you're kind of being a bad person.
Mm-hmm.
Or I sometimes feel that way. Like, I feel like I'm not taking care of the things I should be taking care of.
There's a balance to it.
Yeah, yeah. So it's hard, but you also have to go for the things you believe in because you're not going to get a second chance with some of these things, right? Like, like we're young, so we should be going for these sort of things.
Yeah. So you want to continue? So you were
Long Island.
we're getting sidetracked, but I like the sidetracks because I think it's
I think
really
it builds the story. Yeah,
it builds the story.
It builds the story.
It weaves in the philosophy and where your head was at during these different points in your tennis career and in your life.
So the traveling to Long Island.
So you were talking about the travel.
Yeah. So obviously it gets to you. This is like junior year of high school. My grades, I mean, my classes weren't that bad, so that's why I had pretty high grades. But like, I was getting pretty sleep deprived. Like, it was like maybe 6 hours, 7 hours of sleep each night. So it was getting pretty hard to perform it. And the one thing I actually do want to talk about, that I think is something that people may not talk about, is that when you're sort of low income, and you have these scholarships, there's a pressure. There's a pressure to perform every time. You don't want to perform bad because you're scared of the fact that, oh, what happened if they don't like me anymore and they take it away? So I'm living with that pressure every day. When I go to practice, I'm like, I have to perform. I have to perform. I have to perform. And see, it starts to break you down a little.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there was one point I didn't really like tennis too much. I think we all hit that stage in our sports career where you're like, there's so much pressure. Why am I doing this to myself? But you have to get through it, right? It's just an obstacle that's natural, and you have to get through it. So, junior year was tough, and eventually senior year, still the same thing, still going to Long Island, but eventually that slowed down. So it was tough because they weren't having as many students, so it slowed down, and I had to go back to the courts and the outside courts.
Mm-hmm.
And mentally it's challenging because you're like, damn, I haven't done this in a while.
Especially you've seen the other side.
Yeah, you see the other side. You're like, this is nice. This is a nice tennis center. It's comfy. It's warm. And now you're back out in the winter with the gloves on, with the puffy jacket, where you could barely feel your grip of the racket because your hand is so numb. I mean, at some point, like, my calluses were bleeding because it was so, like, your hand gets really dry in the winter.
Mm-hmm.
And I also started to get like kind of like these skin rashes because it was so dry. Obviously I started putting on cream. Yeah, guys, make sure you moisturize. It's important.
If you take one thing from this podcast,
moisturize.
Hygiene.
Moisturize, guys. No, but yeah, it's tough going back. It's tough going down the mountain, as they say. But yeah, again, it's another hurdle. You just have to, if you believe in it enough, you have to get through it. So,
were you playing tournaments at this point?
Yeah, I was still playing tournaments. Maybe not as much as I should have. A lot of tournaments are expensive, and I think the biggest issue for me was that as you get higher, you have to travel more to tournaments. Like, okay, you have local tournaments, but those don't give you as many points as the higher ones or the national ones.
So points, just to clarify, this is for like USTA rankings?
Yeah, USTA ranking. So, tournaments give you a certain amount of points for your national ranking or regional ranking. Obviously, the ones that are local, well, we're in New York City. So the ones that are local for us is not going to give you that many points. So you want to go for the higher level tournaments. But like I said before, we're in New York City, so we would have to travel to Florida, the summer states, or California. And that just wasn't feasible for my family. I mean, financially, we've been able to save up so much because of the fact that we weren't paying for tennis training. Like, if we had to pay, I don't think I they could have paid for my
Did you
college.
always understand this as a kid? Because
Oh, that's a
like
good question.
I,
That's a great question.
I mean, I like
Yeah.
I don't want to, sound like I was going through, serious financial trouble, but
Uh-huh.
like I was growing up in a, single parent household, and I
Oh, I
was,
didn't know that.
yeah,
Shoot. Okay.
did I,
No, you
have
never
we,
told
have
you
we,
never
have we
told
never
me
talked
that.
about this?
Oh,
Yeah,
shoot. Okay.
I was born through sperm donation actually, so
Oh,
it's just me
okay.
and my mom,
Mm.
and yeah, so there are struggles that come with that. I
Yeah.
mean, it's my mom, she was working her ass off for
Of
basically
course.
like my
Yeah.
whole childhood, so but yeah, I don't think I always understood that like
Mm.
we can't just pay. I mean, I was lucky enough to go to a private school, so I
Yeah.
did I did have a privileged upbringing.
Yeah.
But I was going on
Well, I mean,
financial
where
aid.
where did you grow up though?
Inwood, which is like it's a pretty middle class
In Wood.
neighborhood in Upper
Okay.
Manhattan.
Okay.
So again, I'm not. I had a complicated childhood. It
Yeah.
wasn't good or
No, of
bad. It
course.
was
Yeah.
just like,
I'm sure it's tough in
but
its own
anyway,
sense.
like, so, the reason the private school thing is interesting is because I'm going there on financial aid. Everyone, I'm around can afford to,
Mm.
if they're playing a sport,
Yeah.
their parent, like, if they need to go to a different country to play a tournament,
Yeah.
or if they need to go to another state, or if they need to pay for
They
the
could
most,
do it.
they can do whatever
Yeah.
they,
Easily.
I couldn't.
Yeah.
And I don't think I always understood that as a kid. I was like,
Hmm.
Mom, can I, buy this? Can I buy, like, these pair of shoes are going to help me in
Yeah.
this way. Can I buy these? No, they're $500.
Yeah.
Like, but my friend has it. Well, they can afford it. We
Uh-huh.
can't.
Yeah.
Did you? I didn't. I don't think I really understood that.
No,
Did
that's a
you?
great question. I mean, probably when I was like 5 to 8, maybe I didn't understand it, but I don't know. To me, it was like such a simple upbringing. Like, there was never a need for anything else for me. Like, I don't know. The elementary school I was from, again, it's a decent amount of low income people or like middle class people. So I grew up in a very simple lifestyle. So I never really was like wanting too much that was expensive. I think maybe when I was around 12 years old, maybe I started to think, oh wow, why don't I have the formal training that some of these kids have? But at the same time, I also really enjoyed just the simple grind of being
Yeah.
out there. So
Did you take pride in like,
yeah,
making it work?
there was sort of a pride in just making it work, and I think my parents, the best thing was that my parents were super open to me about what was going on. So I understood that, okay, if we have tennis lessons, we're gonna have to cut out a chunk of their funds for other things, and I understood that. So in some sense, I was happy helping them save too, like in going out and grinding and just because I'm still practicing my tennis and I'm helping them out.
But you
Um,
were able to see the bigger picture, and
yeah, I
you were,
was. I don't know. I guess I was able to at that age. Yeah,
that's impressive.
I know. Well, my dad was always talking about like philosophical things with me. So I was always thinking about not the small things, like just what's actually going on, what's the whole picture.
Hmm.
So yeah,
I had another question. Did your dad have a background in tennis?
yeah. Actually, I swear, if he trained earlier, he probably could have made it. He has
For
so
real?
I swear he has the determination, discipline. He's so witty. I don't think I have the strategic mind like him.
When did he start training?
Uh, he got so the way he told me is that he thought that tennis wouldn't be that bad because he just watched the people. He just watched the people on TV. So he's like, all right, let me try tennis in college. So he started in club tennis, and yeah, I mean, he really liked the sport. And eventually, when I came around, he was like, let him try it out.
Hmm.
And I think he had a lot of joy in helping me, cultivate my tennis career. But I also probably caused some suffering for him. It's really tough. What?
Why? Because he was like
Because he was
working
always,
with you in the
yeah, he
cold,
was
and
always there. He was
yeah.
like, I, as a parent, you probably have to understand that it's your responsibility to take care of your child. So even if he didn't want to, he was there. I gave him a tough time a lot of times too. Sometimes I didn't listen.
Hmm.
You know, it. He'd yell and stuff, right? And as a kid, you don't like that. But it's made me the tougher person that I am. So I'm grateful for him for that. And I mean, like you said, the top of the triangle, it's a very small amount of people. What makes you special enough to be there? Like I feel like some kids don't get that at that age. He told me when I was 10 or 9, he told me that exact statement. Are
What
you
what is
special enough?
what does the top of the triangle mean?
Well, the top of the ranking, top 10 in the world. Grand
Oh,
Slam, yeah, that's what I meant. Like, to be a Grand Slam champion, you have to be special.
mhm.
So at that age, I understood, okay, that means that the work that I put in has to be a lot. Like, I have to dedicate myself to this. Some people, I think also with financial freedom, they're able to play more for fun and it's less serious. But for me, it was always like, I have to get it in every day. I have to do my best. So that was the mindset I was growing up with.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Were you scared to fail, or did you want to succeed?
It was both. It was
Mhm.
both at times. Um, Maybe at a younger age, it was more like I was happy to be succeeding. And then once you build, that's the thing. When you build a reputation, then it gets scary because you're like, oh, now what happened if I fall off? What happened if people don't like how I'm playing now? Maybe I'm not playing as good as before. Again, I had scholarships, so there was always that pressure. But I think I found eventually in senior year that I was happy to just be succeeding again. So it's been a roller coaster. Yeah.
So you want to, I guess, continue with the story. So it was 15, 16.
fifteen,
You're
16, yeah.
back training in the
Back,
cold. You're
yep.
back. It's you're sort of left to your own devices, so you don't have the program.
Yeah.
Um, so I guess, well, I guess the next step is, I guess the recruiting sort of starts to
Yeah,
come
it's
around.
it's it's coming around the recruiting and I'm like, well, I'm not getting all this formal training now. Well, it wasn't formal, but it was good conditions,
Mm-hmm.
you had the tennis academy and everything. Uh Eventually I just reached out to, well, one of the coaches reached out to me and he said there was an opportunity to train at another club. So I got another chance. And I went there. I was doing well. The coaches liked me, so they gave me a full scholarship. That was really nice. It's West Side Tennis Club, so
Mm-hmm.
it's a shout out. But yeah, so when I was there, this is probably the most pivotal moment of my recruiting. My whole recruiting thing is there was this guy that I was watching play, and I was like, he's so good. There was these 5 adults. I was like, dang, they are so good. I just because I never really got the chance to be playing with someone at a super high level. I wasn't playing in these big tournaments, so I was like, I want to give myself a chance. So I found the courage to go over and ask him, hey, can I play a few points with you? And he accepted it. So we played a few points, and I guess he liked me enough because he said, let me get your number. And I was like, okay. So then eventually he sets up a time to hit. I didn't realize he was a former pro. He was a former pro. He had ATP points, which is just ATP for those that don't know. It's the professional tour for the men's side on tennis. So yeah, he had ATP points, and I was like, oh dang, I could rally with him. So I wasn't doing too bad. So he was the one because I was emailing people in senior year. I was emailing coaches, and they weren't really responding because I'm like, I don't have the ranking that some people have. I just had my recruiting video, but I didn't have any sort of validation. So he was the one that helped me. We filmed again, just me and him hitting, and he sent it to some of his friends. And that's where I got the chance to have a tryout to like D1 schools like St. John. I feel I could have done better, but it was tough. And then I also got in contact with a coach here in Binghamton. So it just shows that sometimes you just have to ask, right? Don't be scared to ask. And yeah, I'm just really fortunate that happened. So uh, I would say the recruiting process has been really tough.
Mm-hmm.
Like uh, I don't know.
How do you, well, we can both sort of talk
Yeah.
about this because I also, had a pretty challenging
Mm-hmm.
recruiting process with basketball. How do you cope with the challenges there? I mean, it's not something like for me, I didn't have much reinforcement with it because
Mm-hmm.
I was emailing coaches
Yeah.
and they weren't responding.
Yeah.
And this was over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
Just send out an email. I know they're not going to respond.
Mm-hmm.
There's like a 99% chance I get no response. Just blast them out, blast them out, blast them out, no
Yeah.
response. You go to these I was going to these camps. There's like 500
Oh, you
kids
were going to
there.
the camps. Okay.
Yeah, I was going to the exposure camps, and
Yeah.
ended up being a complete waste of money.
What was it? Did you not perform well, or what happened?
Well, there were times when I did and times when I didn't,
Mm-hmm.
but I think the times that I didn't, like, there are so many kids there that like you really need to play well to stand out,
Of
because
course.
no matter how well you play, there's
Mm-hmm.
always 10 other kids who played very well
Yeah.
at the
Yeah.
bare minimum.
Yeah.
So you really have to perform to stand out. And like,
I mean, these camps were costly too, right? They were like thousands from what I saw for tennis.
I don't think there were thousands for basketball.
Okay.
I think basketball tends to be a little bit cheaper.
Okay.
But I mean, it was hundreds of dollars
Yeah,
per
yeah.
camp, which there were some that were some were like less than 100, some were like $75.
Okay.
Which,
Okay.
like, I mean, that's
not bad.
if your goal is to play a college sport,
Yeah.
and potentially get some money from the school,
Yeah.
or potentially, I mean, ultimately I figured out I wasn't going to be a D1 player. But if I was naive, I didn't understand that. If your goal is to be a D1 player,
Mm-hmm.
putting $100 into a camp to potentially get a scholarship for college,
It's not bad.
It's not a bad. It's not a bad deal.
Long-term investment.
Yeah, exactly. But so there were some camps where I just didn't really play well. I mean, they didn't really suit my game as a player, because I was, I was kind of a high IQ strategic player who, like, played well, and I was a system player, as they say. Like, I play well in a team system. And at the exposure camps, you've never met the kids who are on your team.
Yeah.
It's a free for all.
Mm-hmm.
So the kids who, get exposure from that are the kids who are just isolating, basically, to translate for the non-basketball fanatics. It's just, people who they don't need structure to be good. It's just like, there's no team concepts in these camps.
Yeah,
it's
just
just
star players.
it's star players.
Yeah.
So, but somehow there were, because I understood that these camps, I'm not going to, really be able to showcase my skills very often. So I kind of just have to go to as many as I possibly can, and just hope that, here and now I'm going to just have some sparks and I'm going to play very well, which I did. But I think even when I did have those camps where I, like, really was cooking, you could say, I was still kind of written off, because I'm just, I'm a short, unathletic player, and I had a high IQ and a pretty high skill level. But, coaches, when they, look at potential players, they don't really look for that, because it's skills they think they can build.
Yeah.
So what they're looking for is guys who are just raw. They're just athletic. The skill and IQ piece they can build. So
they're looking athletic for potential.
The tallest, the strongest,
course,
the fastest, the biggest, fastest, and strongest guys. And then they can, the idea is that once those guys make it to the program, you can teach them how to shoot. You can teach them, how to, play in the in the team environment. Which, to be fair,
they sort of do the same thing with tennis. So,
to be fair, that is rational.
It's a business. Yeah, that's the tough part.
That is, but anyway, yeah. So sorry, it's kind of a long-winded story, but
how did I deal with
But yeah, so anyway, the coping with it it was tough. I mean, I guess I just got to a point where I was like, I'm gonna control what I can control, and whatever happens. But my job is to just keep putting in the work, keep going. What was your sort of your approach?
I mean, it's probably pretty similar to yours, where I didn't really expect too much for myself. I guess I had lower expectations. I started the recruiting process late. I wasn't super informed about it, so I didn't. I remember one of my, like, mom's aunts or something like that was telling me, like, "Oh, why didn't you start early?" But I was like, no one told me, So it was tough, because I knew senior year was late, and coaches were already basically filling in the rosters. But it's kind of like colleges; it never hurts to try. And so I already accepted the fact that maybe I wasn't gonna get too many schools. I got a few. I think the thing that helped me cope the most, and which is why I'm pretty okay right now, is because of my tennis video, which it has 100,000 views, and I had so many, like,
damn, what?
Yeah, it did. It blew up. I was like, what?
How did that happen?
I don't know how it happened, but it did. But the comments were so nice. I was like,
hold on, we got to talk about.
You want to talk about that?
100,000 on what? YouTube, Instagram?
Just YouTube. YouTube.
On YouTube?
On
how?
I don't know how it happened.
Why do you think that happened?
Why did it happen?
I know some D1 players whose
I think,
recruiting videos have like 36 views.
well, you know, I think it's important that you look at what could be really good, really attractive to an audience. And I was looking at college recruiting videos. I was like studying it. I was like, okay, how can I make something that people would actually watch? Because some of these recruiting videos are not the most exciting.
So you use retention tactics.
Yeah, I was
video.
thinking about it. I was like, okay, I want to be known, and
Yeah.
I don't have the tournament exposure. I didn't really go to camps because a lot of them required me to like travel to Florida or something.
Mhm.
And that's really tough. Those were like the good camps to go to. So I didn't go to any of those. So I needed exposure. So I needed a good video. So a lot of tennis players, they would like, I guess this is tips for anyone that wants to make a recruiting video. Mr. Beast, but for recruiting.
Yeah, bro, literally.
No, it's probably some luck to it too. But anyway, a lot of players they would like show themselves walking onto the court. I was like, this is super slow. People already clicked off the video in like the first 10 seconds. So I showed, if you look at the video, I showed my like best shots or like, me hitting really well in the first 5 seconds. And then I introduced myself, but I introduced myself very quickly. And then we get straight into the hitting. People have too many long introductions. No one wants to see it. And I think...
Well, because these coaches have hundreds of kids who want to play for their program.
I know, exactly.
They got one kid who's like, it's got the cool intro where he's like strolling onto the...
No, that's what
nobody's watching
no,
that.
Strolling onto the court, and they have they have the best...
Tying the
laces,
shoes,
the best cameras. And I don't know, I think maybe the thing that was attractive about my video was that it was sort of relatable to with a lot of the audience, because for tennis players, they want to look really good. So they have an indoor facility. They're playing in an indoor facility. They have a coach near them. For me, I was just sitting on an outside court. I was sitting on an outside court that was a little roughed up.
Yeah.
And again, like a lot of the comment section was just kind of inspired by the fact that I told them my story. And they were inspired that I was, playing at the level I was, and they all wanted to, get better at tennis. And they told me about their stories and how they also train outside and how it was tough for them. And
so it wasn't just a recruiting video.
No, it wasn't just recruiting.
It was also just relatable to people.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I think if you see a tennis player in a beautiful facility that probably costed a lot of money to rent out for this, you have to rent out the court time too for a recruiting video. So you're on a time crunch. I'm sure these guys have a lot of time though. So they're spending a lot of money on this. And then they just see me on an outside tennis court. Who are you going to relate to more? Because the majority of people are not training in those kind of facilities. So I think maybe that's what also helped it. Yeah.
Yeah. So how did this sort of work in the video? When you were telling your story, how did you weave that into the video?
Oh no, I was just in the comment section.
Oh,
it was just in the comment section.
Yeah. Okay,
I had some nice comments, and I just told them about my story. And I think the engagement in the comment section maybe also made YouTube recommend it.
Yeah, I was about to say that.
Yeah, that was probably one of the reasons.
Yeah.
Oh shoot!
No problem.
My phone.
Got you. So you ended up coming to Binghamton.
Yeah.
And were you like, how did that kind of fit in with tennis? Had you just accepted at this point that you weren't going to play tennis at the next level, or were you going to try to walk on here?
Well, the coach said that I had a chance of maybe training with a team. It's not possible due to NCAA rules, so it's tough. But there was that hope. But the reason why I came to Binghamton also was because it was the most affordable. It was a good school, and I don't know how this happened, but it was the best school I got into. I got waitlisted to everything. It was tough. I don't know which was tougher for me, to college recruiting or college admissions.
Same with me, man.
No, I feel like I got, pardon my language, I feel like I got fucked over a little.
Yeah, dude, it's very relatable, man.
Yeah.
This is the story of my senior year. I was just...
No, because you're a smart guy, I feel like
man. I
feel like you would succeed anywhere, seriously. So...
you too, man. Yeah. I don't know. I was like, I applied early, rejected, waitlisted, deferred, rejected. Like,
I think the waitlists were the worst.
Waitlists were the worst.
It gives you the hope.
Yeah.
And then they're just like, nah.
That shit did not move, bro.
Nah.
I was talking to my, the guidance counselor at my high school. He was like, yeah, there is a very low chance that this waitlist moves.
Uh-huh.
I was
No,
like, all
I
right.
got waitlisted to Boston University, and I was like, no, I don't even want to stay on it. So I just took myself off because I think they only accepted one waitlist out of like 7, 8 years. So I was like, I'm not giving myself hope for that. But like that's something maybe you should be a little sort of realistic in because the statistics are there. But yeah, I think also you sort of realize when you're in college too, it's like how different is this going to be from another college? Like they're still going to be providing the same education, and I don't think I'm lacking anything here. So
Mhm,
I mean, like you and I, we try to read as much too. So
mhm.
probably reading is going to give you more exposure to actual real life and life lessons, and also just the fact that we've done sports our whole lives that has taught us so many valuable lessons that any college is not going to teach you, in my
Mhm.
opinion. Yeah,
Agreed.
yeah.
All right, so we're almost an hour in,
Almost an hour in.
about
Shoot.
to talk about the main thing I wanted to talk about, which is
Let me get
crazy.
some water.
All right, here we go. We're back.
All right.
So let's talk about life after tennis.
Yeah.
Has it been difficult for you to find the same source of meaning, or not the same source, but the same type of meaning in your life now
Mm-hmm.
that like you devote? Because don't correct me if I'm wrong, but it
Mm-hmm.
seems like you were devoting all of your sort of extra time outside of school to tennis
Well,
growing up.
I think you could relate to this where you just never envision yourself doing something else besides your sport for the rest of your life. So now you have to see a sort of different path. Um, I guess the best way to describe this is, I was reading the book Shootout. It's by the founder of Nike.
I've read it. Yeah,
Yeah.
great book.
So in the beginning, so I think this would be a good metaphor. So in the beginning, he talks about, he's running because he's a D1 runner. And he thinks to himself, what is his purpose in life? And for him, his purpose in life was that he wanted life to be fun. That was the quote, I believe. And I've thought about it all the time in college. I'm like, okay, what's the purpose in my life? And for me, my motto, I guess you could say, is I want life to be beautiful. So, tennis is one thing that's beautiful in my life, but I also have other things, like I said before, I do video editing. I think editing videos is one of the most beautiful things you could do because just like a 5-second video could tell so much about a topic and it could express so much. So I'm always looking at things and trying out things that I feel like I could express myself the most in. And that's where I find my purpose. I've realized that tennis helped me express myself physically, but that doesn't mean I can't express myself in other things in my life. So that's the way I've been adjusting. I mean, obviously, I do miss tennis. It's it's always in the back of my mind, but weather conditions are tough. It's snowing, dang it, it's Binghamton, so you gotta find other things to do, and it's never there's never an excuse not to work out too. Like, yeah, I try to keep myself as fit as possible,
Mm-hmm.
and I do like working out. Like that's also something I find joy in. Not as much as tennis, but it still makes me happy. So that's the way I've sort of been approaching this whole thing.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
said you mentioned that your motto is, or I guess that your guiding principle
Yeah.
is that you want life to be beautiful.
Yeah.
How did you come to that conclusion, and what does that mean to you?
Yeah, no, good question. Again, I would say freshman, well, freshman year, but fall semester when I didn't have tennis, I was thinking, okay, we all go through this. What am I doing now? What's the purpose? And I'm a business major, so I'm like, okay, no, my purpose is to get a good job, make a good living, all this crap, and I'm like, no, this is not me. What am I doing with my life? So I'm trying to figure out what is something. It has to be simple, right? Because these kind of things, you have to think to yourself, what's going to guide me through life? So it has to be very simple. That's where I came up with, okay, I just want to focus my life around this one thing, and that life has to be beautiful. You have to enjoy it. And what it means to me, really, it's like Bruce Lee said, at some point, you don't think, you feel, right? Like whatever you're doing at some point, it's going to be expressing yourself to the fullest. It's no longer about anything surface level. It's like everything I'm trying to do has a deeper meaning behind it. And it's whatever it is, like I said, video editing, like photography, tennis, anything physical. I think physical performances is also a great way to express yourself. I like things that are multi-layered in emotions. Um, I mean, even investing in some sense, there's that sort of beauty with dealing with the stock market and all the different emotions that go into it, and studying companies and understanding, what's going on with their corporation, how is their community dealing with the changes in the economies and everything. So I think if you look at life this way, it's a lot more full of color
Yeah.
than a lot of other people where it's just get a job. I think that's just maybe a more bland way of looking about it. So yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you, basically you think that, or you view life being beautiful as like kind of a combination of, a variety of different things.
Hmm.
So first of all, it brings together your physical well-being.
Yeah.
You have the emotional side of it, so
Hmm.
kind of blending together
Yeah.
the human experience, if
The
you
whole
will.
human
So the whole
experience.
human
Yeah.
experience, a variety of different emotions.
Hmm.
Um, you also mentioned expressing yourself.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that? What do you mean by that?
Yeah. I think a lot of the work we do, I mean, just look at the homework we do, right? Are we expressing ourselves? No, this is really bland. Like, you're just doing what someone taught you. What I mean by expressing yourself is what, like I said before, whatever is pure in you, whatever you feel is right to you, that's not harming others, obviously, and you feel so inclined to do it that you wake up excited every day, that's something you should be expressing to the world. Because what's wrong with that, right? This is the one life you have. You should be expressing what you want to do. Um, I mean, like I said before, I found confidence in my voice, so now I try to express it as much as possible. I think there's something really, really, really beautiful in public speaking. So I'm just doing whatever I think gives me, uh, how do I say it? It's kind of like a canvas, and some people, they have a really bland canvas. They don't do they do whatever someone tells you to do. I'm trying to paint a canvas that's me, you know.
Mm.
I'm trying to do what I think like fully represents what the person I am.
And that starts with following your heart.
Yeah.
And so the last podcast that I record, I have no idea what order these things are going to end up coming out in, but the last podcast that I
Yeah.
recorded, there's another kid here actually,
Mm-hmm.
Peter Slivics.
Mm-hmm.
He's like an entrepreneur. He has a couple of business projects that he's working
Great.
on.
Yeah.
And he mentioned this quote from a book.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it was a quote or an idea, but
Mm-hmm.
basically the idea or quote, whatever it is, was you want to unify heart and mind.
For sure.
So you want to kind of be congruent in the
Mm-hmm.
thing that you rationally think you should be doing,
Mm-hmm.
but also, fuels the fire, so to speak, within you, and
Yeah.
resonates with your, I guess some people would call it the soul.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously the metaphysical claims are above
Metaphysical.
my pay grade here, but no, yeah, I mean, it really is an interesting balance
Mm-hmm.
to think about, like the things that you sort of just feel pulled to versus the things that, and we were sort of talking about this at the beginning with,
Mm-hmm.
like, should you be playing, should we be spending
Yeah,
all this time on
should we?
sports that we're not
Exactly.
going to, that we're, most likely from a statistical point of view,
Mm-hmm.
not going to be successful in.
Yeah.
Obviously there's exceptions to that rule, but
Yeah.
from a statistical point of view, it's unlikely that we're going to succeed, but we
Mm-hmm.
felt pulled in that direction.
Yeah, inclined to do it.
Yeah, exactly. So it's an interesting question of like,
Mm-hmm.
how much do you spend, how much energy gets expended on the thing that you
Mm-hmm.
feel like you should be doing
Yeah.
versus, obviously that's not harmful, versus the thing that rationally
Mm-hmm.
should be done.
I want to go back to your point about the whole metaphysical thing. So I was listening to this speech. I don't know if you heard about it, but anyway, basically it was like, it was how you approach your life. And it was basically saying when you're in your deathbed, there are going to be a lot of people that are going to have ghosts around them. And these are all the people they could have been. And you have to take them to the grave with you. And do you want to live with that? And they're all angry at you. All of them are saying, this could have been me. This could have been me. You could have been great at this. You could have been great at this. You could have been great at this. And you weren't. And you have to pull all those ghosts down to your grave with you forever in your death. And you have to think about, if your heart just feels so, like, if it just pulls you to do that, why not do it, right? You have one life. What's it? If you give it a shot and you screw up, it's okay. You have 4 years to do other things. There was nothing wrong with that. Some people are so afraid, and I was afraid too. At some point, I was like, oh, but like I said before, you're gonna suck. But again, the big picture, you have more years to do other things, and it's okay. You have to do what feels right at times, you know.
Yeah. Wow, I love that idea. I mean, it works so well with the way people think
Mm-hmm.
about like I know a huge regret that a lot of old people have
Mm-hmm.
is that they wish they would have stayed more true to themselves.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
well,
actually, I want to talk about that too. So, I was in a BlackRock event, right? I was listening to panelists speak, and I don't think people actually fully take advices to heart because when you listen to these guys speak, they're saying, "Why?" Okay, you ask them why did they pick their job, and they're saying, "I picked my job because my parents told me because it was secure. Some of them may like it, but oh, it's a good career path." And I don't think people actually take that to heart because when you listen to that, you're like, "Okay, yeah, it sounds about right." But if you actually take that to heart, isn't that scary? Like I find that scary that the majority of people are going down a path that they never chose. It's just what someone told them to go down.
yeah,
So you have to fight against that. So I'm trying to take to heart whatever someone older is experiencing and they tell me. I actually fully I try to remember that as much as possible whenever I do my things.
well, I like the point that you make about people rarely take advice to heart.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed that with myself, like sometimes, especially because we were talking about reading,
Yeah.
like a lot of the time it's not about reading more, but
Mm-hmm.
actually implementing the thing that
Oh,
you
for
did
sure,
read.
for sure.
I'm sure you could relate to that.
Nah, yeah. I mean, sometimes you read a book and you're like, "Damn, that was good," and then, and then,
And then you move on to
and
the
then
next book and
move on.
forget it
You
all.
did nothing.
Yeah.
Actually, I was listening to the speaker. I forgot his name, but he's a really good speaker. And I was listening to his advice, and he said, "What you should do is every chapter you read, you should talk about one thing you should implement in your life. So every chapter you tell, okay, what am I going to change in my life according to what I just learned." So I sort of been trying to incorporate that. I haven't had the time to read as much, but that's something I'm going to try to incorporate more. I think it'll help too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although sometimes, not to tear apart that
No,
point,
of course.
but like I think it's a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
But there are books where maybe the implementation isn't as obvious. Like if you're
Mm-hmm.
reading about something that's more societal
Yeah.
or philosophical, like
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
a broader level.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess, well, now I just had the thought. You could still implement a change in your thought. Like you could still write down on your, whatever journal you're keeping of like,
Yeah.
steps that I can take
Mm-hmm.
from books. You can still, uh, internalize that you
Mm-hmm.
would change your thinking around a particular issue, even
Yeah.
if it doesn't actually materialize into
No.
action yet.
Yeah, that was what I was going to
You
talk
can
about.
still say, okay, I just learned all about the economy.
Mm-hmm.
I might not see an obvious way in which
Yeah.
I can change what I'm doing to, make this better,
Mm-hmm.
but I can at least change the way I think about these topics.
Yeah. Yeah. I wanted to bring up the point where, again, I was listening to someone speak and they said, you're usually a lot of times you're not going to remember what you think about a person. Like you don't remember the specific things about a person. What you remember the most is how they made you feel.
Mm-hmm.
So the same thing with a book. You're not going to remember all the specifics, but you're going to remember how it made you feel. So again, we talk about the subconscious in psychology. The subconscious already probably shifted the moment you read it and you feel a certain way about a topic now. It's different now.
Agreed.
So like you said, even if you can't implement it, it still probably is within you a little. It's been internalized.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think there's some extent to which subconsciously, even if you can't really remember that much from a book,
Mm-hmm.
it still might have an effect on the way that you think and feel and act.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I also think that there are some books where it's like Atomic Habits. Have you ever read that book?
No, I didn't read it. No.
Yeah. Well, maybe you look at that. I think you would really like that book.
Mm-hmm.
Although, never mind. I don't want to roast this guy. But I was gonna say it's a book where I think you could probably get a lot of the information from just looking at like summaries.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever.
Yeah.
I never read summaries. No. But that's a book that I read that there were clear action steps that I could have taken that I just didn't really take.
Yeah.
You know? So I think in a book like that where these aren't philosophical ideas, these are, consequential, practical steps that I could take.
Mm-hmm.
With a book like that, I feel like the tactic of writing down or recording, clear changes that I could make in my life probably would have been very helpful to me, and that would have been very beneficial, as opposed to a book like, if I'm reading ancient philosophy, like if I'm reading On Liberty by John Stuart Mill, like it might not be the case.
Shoot, man, you might go back to the traditional videos. Let's not do that. You can't agree with all those points of ancient philosophy.
Well, but I could change or I could at least write down an objection.
Of course, yeah. It just helps you broaden your thinking.
Yeah, for sure. All right, I feel like is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
I feel like I had one more thing to talk about. What you said? Wait, could you remind me what you talked about again there?
It was writing down notes.
Yeah. I guess maybe this would be the final points or something. So I was reading this book about business. And like you said, there are practical things that you could do to improve your financial health. And I didn't really implement any of that. But like I said before, it made me feel a certain way. And there is this one quote that I remember, and it's not something that I implement, but it's something that just you could think about everywhere. And it's the fact that he's in the book, he said one of his best advice was that people don't understand how being a good person is better for business. Like, you see those business gurus, all of them are trying to scam people and all that. They're trying to get dirty money. But in this book, he said specifically, if you're a good person, that brings about better business. So, maybe that doesn't help you with implementation too much, but it's a universal idea that you could go about your life with. It's always in the back of your head where you're like, oh, if I do the right thing, it's going to be better.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's an interesting question of like, I might read something and not immediately see an obvious way to apply it, but it might just naturally change the way that I think as a result of reading it. So it's an interesting discussion to be had as to like how much of what you read needs to have a tangible impact on your life versus just naturally changing the way that you think. And just changing the way that you approach problems. Like, I don't know. I always wonder, like, there are some books that I can't really remember the information from them, but do you think on a subconscious level it's impacting the way that I view problems?
It probably is. I mean, I don't remember certain things about other books, but I still remember the way they've made me feel. So I just go about my life, and it probably is there. Again, like we said, your heart tells you to do things. You're compelled to do certain things. So it probably the lessons that you learn were maybe ingrained in you, and you're pulled to do something else. So I think it is probably within you somewhat. Whatever you like the most about the book is probably in there. Yeah.
Awesome.
All right.
Well, thanks for that was an awesome conversation, man.
Thank you, man.
I loved hearing about all your tennis experiences.
Thank you so much.
The philosophical.
No, this was great. We should do another time. This was
Hell
fun.
yeah, man. I'd love to. All right.